Certainly. Here is a comprehensive summary of Søren Kierkegaard's life story, focusing on his biography, major works, and philosophical contributions. Certainly. Here's a detailed and structured presentation of Søren Kierkegaard, 1805. Life and Thought. Early life born, May 5th, 1813, in Copenhagen, Denmark. Father, Michael Pedersen Kierkegaard, a wealthy wool merchant with deep religious convictions, who believed he and his family were cursed by God for a youthful sin. Mother, Anne Sørensdatter. Lund, quiet and uneducated, but pious, suffered early tragedy. 5 of his 6 siblings died young. Søren and his older brother Pater Christian, later Bishop of Aalborg, survived. The young Kierkegaard was raised in an atmosphere of guilt, religious seriousness, and intellectual rigor. Education and inner conflict. University of Copenhagen began in 1830, focusing on theology, philosophy, and literature. He lived a somewhat frivolous life in his early university years, but soon underwent a personal and spiritual crisis. In 1841, he completed his degree with a dissertation on the concept of irony with constant reference to Socrates, a philosophical treatment of irony as a mode of existence. Regine Olsen and the Break-In, 1840, Kierkegaard became engaged to Regine Olsen, but he broke it off in 1841. This deeply affected both of them. Regine later married another man, but Kierkegaard never stopped loving her. He saw the breakup as necessary for his religious calling, but it haunted him emotionally and spiritually. It became a recurring theme in his work, symbolizing the conflict between worldly love and divine duty. Literary and philosophical output. From 1843 to 1855, Kierkegaard produced a remarkable body of work, often using pseudonyms to present conflicting perspectives. His writings blend philosophy, theology, literature, and psychology, often in rich, poetic language. Major themes: the individual and subjectivity. Truth is found not in systems, but in personal experience and commitment. Subjectivity is truth. Existence and anxiety. Freedom produces anxiety, the dizziness of possibility. Despair, the refusal to be oneself before God, explored as a deep spiritual sickness. Stages of life. Aesthetic, life devoted to pleasure, beauty, and distraction. Ethical, a life of moral responsibility and social duty. Religious, the highest stage, demanding a leap of faith and full submission to God. Faith and paradox. Faith involves a paradox, e.g., Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac, and cannot be explained by reason. Attack on Christendom. In his final years, Kierkegaard launched a harsh critique of the Danish state church, which he viewed as hypocritical and spiritually dead. He believed authentic Christianity was radical, demanding, and deeply personal, not merely a social or cultural tradition. He wrote scathing journalistic pieces in The Moment, 1855, denouncing the official church as a betrayal of Christ. Death and Legacy. Died November 11th, 1855. After collapsing in the street and spending weeks in the hospital, refused the last rites from the state church. At the time, he was largely ignored or mocked, but his works gained posthumous influence, especially in the 20th century. Legacy and influence. Father of Existentialism, Kierkegaard, laid the foundation for existentialist thought, influencing Jean-Paul Sartre, Martin Heidegger, Simone de Beauvoir, Karl Barth, Paul Tillich, Rudolf Bultmann, in theology, Viktor Frankl, Rollo May, in psychology. His writings on anxiety, despair, freedom, and faith remain vital for philosophy, theology, and literature. Famous quotes: "Subjectivity is truth. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. To be a Christian is to become one." Søren Kierkegaard's education. Søren Kierkegaard's education played a crucial role in shaping his intellectual development and philosophical outlook. Here's a focused overview. Early education. Kierkegaard received a classical education at home, primarily guided by his father, Michael Pedersen Kierkegaard. His father emphasized religious instruction, philosophy, and literature, giving Søren early exposure to the Bible, Lutheran theology, and Greek philosophy. He attended the civic grammar school, Borger Dydskolen, in Copenhagen, where he studied Latin, Greek, and philosophy at the University of Copenhagen, 1830 or 1841. Enrolled in 1830 at age 17 to study theology, which was expected due to his family's religious background. He also took courses in philosophy, literature, and classical languages. He was initially unfocused, spending many years indulging in Copenhagen's cultural life and avoiding exams. His studies were interrupted by personal and spiritual crises, especially the death of his father in 1838, which marked a turning point. Master's degree. Kierkegaard eventually completed his studies and earned his Master of Arts, Magister Artium, in theology in 1841. His thesis, on the concept of irony with constant reference to Socrates. Scholarly work combining literary analysis and philosophical critique. It analyzed Socratic irony and used it as a framework for understanding Kierkegaard's view of individuality and existence. Philosophical self-education, though formally trained. In Lutheran theology, Kierkegaard's real education was self-driven through deep reading of the Bible, especially the New Testament, studying thinkers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Hegel, and Kant, engaging critically with the dominant Hegelian philosophy of the time, which he ultimately rejected. Summary formal education, theology at the University of Copenhagen, 1830 to 1841 thesis on Socratic irony, languages, fluent in Latin and Greek, well-read in German philosophy, informal education, lifelong reading, theological meditation, and intense personal reflection, personal crisis and Regine Olsen, one of the most defining episodes in Søren Kierkegaard's life, and a key to understanding much of his philosophy was his brief engagement to Regine Olsen and the personal crisis that surrounded it. Who was Regine Olsen? Regine Olsen, 1822 to 1904, was a bright, cultured young woman from a respectable Danish family. Kierkegaard met her in 1837 when she was about 15 and he was 24. Over time, he fell deeply in love with her, and in September 1840, he proposed marriage, which she accepted. The engagement and breakup. Just 1 year later, in October 1841, Kierkegaard broke off the engagement. He returned the engagement ring with a short, cryptic letter and offered no full explanation to her or her family. The breakup shocked Regine and the Copenhagen social circle. Why did he break it off? Though he never gave a clear answer, Kierkegaard's writings and journals reveal several interwoven reasons. Sense of unworthiness and guilt. He believed his melancholy, inherited from his father, made him unfit for marriage or happiness, felt that a truly religious life demanded sacrifice, even of personal love. He may have feared that Regine would suffer in a marriage with someone so emotionally and spiritually burdened. Religious calling Kierkegaard saw his life as dedicated to God and believed this mission required isolation and suffering. He likened his act to Abraham sacrificing Isaac, a test of faith that defies ethical explanation, a central theme in Fear and Trembling. Fear of intimacy and commitment. Modern scholars also consider that Kierkegaard may have struggled with deep psychological ambivalence about intimacy, freedom, and permanence. Aftermath and Regine's life. Regine was devastated, but eventually recovered. In 1843, she married Johann Friedrich Schlegel, a civil servant and later governor of the Danish West Indies. She remained married for life and kept Kierkegaard's letters and some of his books. Kierkegaard never stopped loving her and often referred to her indirectly in his writings, sometimes calling her the beloved. Influence on his philosophy and writings. Regine Olsen is a central figure in Kierkegaard's authorship, especially regarding the tragic divide between love and duty. He used his relationship with her as a symbol of the tension between earthly love and spiritual calling. Fear and Trembling, 1843. Written shortly after the breakup, this work uses the story of Abraham and Isaac as a metaphor for his decision. Just as Abraham could not explain his act to Sarah or Isaac, Kierkegaard felt he could not explain his rejection of Regine. The Knight of Faith. He creates the concept of the Knight of Faith, someone who gives up what he loves most, like Regine, but maintains belief that God will restore it. This figure becomes a model of absolute religious commitment. Final years and Regine's reaction in the final entries of his journal. Kierkegaard still refers to Regine with tenderness and longing. After his death in 1855, Regine preserved his memory and later supported the publication of his works. Despite everything, she never publicly spoke ill of him and remained connected to his legacy. In summary, the breakup with Regine Olsen was not just a private sorrow, became the emotional and spiritual crucible of Kierkegaard's philosophy. It forced him to confront the deepest existential questions. What is love? What does faith demand? Can truth be communicated? Through this experience, he turned personal anguish into profound philosophical insight. Søren Kierkegaard. Philosophical career. Søren Kierkegaard's philosophical career was as unconventional as it was profound. Between 1843 and his death in Japan, 1855, he produced a remarkable body of work that explored existence, faith, despair, freedom, and the individual's relationship with God. His style was literary, poetic, ironic, and often pseudonymous, employing multiple voices to express the paradoxes and tensions of human life. Beginning of his authorship, 1843, after breaking off his engagement with Regine Olsen in 1841, Kierkegaard threw himself into writing. In 1843 alone, he published two of his most famous and foundational works,